My mum's going to hear this. I know.
I actually like Davide.
Davide. I actually have friends who call me Davide.
But here we are.
Another day, another podcast.
Yep. Welcome to another idea.
Podcast for creatives and entrepreneurs.
That want to level up their business.
Yeah. We are here, hopefully, just to provide just a little bit of inspiration and some thought-provoking ideas for anybody that's running a business on their own, in a small team, wherever you might be. I think we've always said, look, we just genuinely hope that people take like one little soundbite out of each episode and they're like, yeah, that works for me. I'm going to try that.
Yeah, definitely.
Rather than just keeping themselves in their own little bubble. So yeah, hopefully here as a bit of company to you guys, wherever you are, give us a shout out, do all those clickety things that Igor asked for.
Yeah.
We could do some more reviews, couldn't we? Reviews are nice.
Definitely.
I like a little review when it comes through. Are you okay? You're looking at me as though like you're waiting. You're waiting to say something.
No. I'm rambling. You were riffing.
Away.
You were riffing. Some allow you space to just go for it. He's on it. I like the Sam.
What do you want to talk about?
Well, first of all, we have a guest, but we've got someone else in the building as well. So
we have, yeah.
We got to give a good shout out to Helen Rose.
Lady Helen. Lady Helen's in the house.
Lady Helen's in the house. She won one of the competitions, so she's here just sort of like absorbing.
Ago.
Yeah.
It's taken us a while to line the diary up, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But she's here.
Yeah.
And then quite amazingly, as a turn of events, she's not only here as a guest and an audience member. She is here as a guest. She's now stepping into the person that's dropped out at lunchtime.
Yeah,
so,
that's it. Shooting her shots. So
incredible.
You'll get to meet her very soon.
So she'll be on the next episode, so look out for that one. But today we've got David here, who is actually a former groom of mine. Mm-hmm. Shot his wedding in Rhodes, didn't Dave?
Did, yeah. Do you remember how hot that was?
Davide, what are we going for?
Well, it used to be Dave, but I mean, mostly David now.
David.
Yeah.
I remember someone saying to me once, like, at work, like, oh, everyone knows a Dave, don't they? And I was like, oh.
yeah.
And from that moment onwards, I became David. And then anytime anybody asked me, I was like, no, it's David.
David.
Yeah, because I was like, everyone knows a Dave. And I was like, Dave sounds dreadful.
I'm not Dave.
So now I'm David.
You don't fit the stereotypical Dave in my mind.
No,
no,
I'm too suave.
Like a plasterer.
Yeah.
No, you're definitely not that.
Yeah.
It was that was a hot wedding.
It was extremely hot. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I have told you this. I think I put it in the blog post, but this is a little story for the wedding photographers out there that will make your bum get a bit squeaky. It was that hot that during the ceremony, one of my cameras powered down.
I do
powered down for the best part of half an hour.
Well,
it was a nerve-wracking time. I think it must have been like 43, 44 degrees.
It actually was.
It went through 40.
Yeah.
I know that. And there was no shade.
No shade
there was no shade.
No.
It was the height of the day. It was like, I think it was like 3. Was it a 3 o'clock ceremony?
Yeah.
Something like
that.
Yeah. In Rhodes in Greece, and it was meltingly hot.
It was. I was absolutely crapping myself because the day before we went to the venue, and obviously we met the people running the wedding and went through all of our plans. And it was a Greek wedding, and they kind of everything is like super relaxed, so nothing seemed to be they didn't seem to be on top of anything. So I was really nervous because it just didn't seem like our wedding was going to go ahead. And B, I was in shorts and like a really light linen shirt, and I was wet. And I was thinking, well, tomorrow I'm going to have to wear a 3-piece suit and a tie and have my shirt done up. And I was absolutely crapping myself. And then in the morning, I remember sitting there in my swimming shorts. And actually, we went for a swim, didn't we, in the morning?
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, like, how am I going to cope? I'm going to be nervous. I'm going to be in my suit. It's going to be 40 degrees.
Everything.
And actually, I almost didn't sweat at all, which was like so bizarre. It was like my body just thought, okay, today you can.
I think when you're at a wedding like that and it is that hot, I think we all just accept that we're all in the same boat.
Yeah,
that's it. Like, we're all going to be sweaty and messy.
Yeah, well, you had skin tight jeans on. I don't know what you were thinking.
Did I?
You did, didn't you?
Sam Docker with skin tight jeans.
You said you didn't want to burn.
A slim. Oh yeah, no, yeah. I used. Yeah, I've gone to weddings before and wore like shorts, and I'm like, that's a bad move.
Must have needed like talcum powder to get out of them.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, David.
You started it.
Yeah. Shouldn't have called him Davide, should I? But yeah, no, it was a great wedding though. They pulled it out of the bag, didn't they? Even though you had your worries about the venue,
miracle,
it was
great.
It was quite a party. I can remember that.
Yeah, it was fun.
And fast forward 4 years, and here you are, sat in front of us again.
Yeah.
And we're talking about your business, the Strap Tailor.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
Have we got some things we need to talk about before we get to that?
Yes, we do.
Go on, Igor.
Yes, we do.
You take the mantle.
Initially, we were very much like, should we not? Are we not? But as you said, yeah, we kind of like just need to commit, shoot a shot and just commit really that we are going to do it. And in some ways, this is kind of like our way of doing it.
Yeah, it is. And this is something that we've been kind of working on the last few weeks, couple of months in the background.
Yeah.
And I think by putting this out now, we're giving ourselves like a level of accountability. Merla, we're definitely doing it. So we'll palm it off to Merla and make sure it gets out. No, we are. We've got a bit to do, but we are almost ready to announce.
Yeah.
Hopefully by the time this episode drops, it will have already announced.
Yeah. Content Creation Day.
Yeah.
And it'll be on the 4th.
I don't even know what we're going to call it in that sense, aren't we?
I don't know.
It's kind of, I suppose, in its essence, is a workshop.
Yeah, it is a workshop.
But it's got like an element of a styled shoot. But actually, where this differs to maybe other styled shoots that are out there is that we're taking the approach of hosting like a full wedding, aren't we?
Yeah, that's it.
Really.
From getting ready to the dance floor.
And it's with me and you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, you'll only get 40 spots available. That's it. And it'll be split within 2 days. So it's literally...
So it's a single day workshop, 20 people each day.
Yeah, that's it.
And once those 20 spots are filled, that's it. We are done. We're not doing another one this year.
That's it.
But it's going to be in Oxfordshire.
Yeah.
We won't announce the venue just yet. Let's wait till we've pushed it all out. But it's a lovely barn in Oxfordshire.
Yeah, we've got it all booked.
Got some models, got a couple of models, got stylists, got florist.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're really excited. It's something that we've kind of wanted to put together for a little while now.
Yeah. Especially with the way content creation is going today, it's great to do it, but at the same time bring educational value to it, or educational element to it. So we're really hot on that.
We're certainly not going to be, here you go guys, off you go and shoot, do what you want. We're going to be there to kind of guide and help and pass on sort of our knowledge, but also give you real kind of value in terms of being able to see an entire wedding day, rather than just like a staged kind of moment. Not that there's anything wrong with those workshops. So, they're all really valuable and helpful, but
that's it.
We want to try and bring something else to the market. So that is it.
Yeah.
We haven't thought of a name yet, so maybe by the time this goes out, we have got a name.
Yeah.
But hey, we'll see.
Yeah. But that aside, let's dive in. Davide. No, David. Just doing research on you, it's been amazing to sort of like just delve a little bit into your world, because it is a proper world. Just literally going through your account and the community that you have around you of people that are really into their watches. There are people that are really into their watches.
Oh yeah, very much.
I was like, whoa, this is a whole other world. So yeah, this is going to be one of those episodes.
Let's not play that like it's watch straps, but it's not like watch straps that you think are just watch straps. We're not doing like what are those like kind of, what are the really, I was trying to, like Swatch watch straps, aren't they?
I come here with my Casio.
They're not those. David's in a slightly different market, isn't he?
Definitely. But just talk to us through your journey. How did you start your passion for watches, and how did you build a business really to create your straps and everything you're doing?
Just give us it all, David.
Yeah.
Just give it us all. We're kicking back. I'm ready just to take it all in.
Where do I start? So originally, when I went to uni, I kind of did the kind of cookie cutter thing, right? Which is like, everybody at school tells you need to go to uni. That's the number one thing. So you try and choose something that you're interested in. And it actually turned out there wasn't like much that I was like really passionate about, apart from one thing, which was like web design. And I was like the kid at school that was like designing websites before everyone like really knew what the internet was. And like the internet obviously was a thing, but I was the kid like building like parents' websites for their companies and things. So I was like always super interested in that. Went to university and did computer science, so programming and maths, which was supremely dull. And I was only surrounded by men. There was like 4 women on my course, which was hilarious. And I really wanted to do web design, but my dad like really pushed me into computer science.
Why was that a problem, David? Why was that a problem?
What?
Only 3 women on your course.
Oh well, yeah. It was and I was in an all-male hall, which was ridiculous. So I arrived on day one at university, and I was like in an all-male hall as well. And I was just like, oh, this has really gone from bad to worse now. I've gone to uni, I'm in an all-male hall, and there's 3 women on my course, or 4, something like that. But anyway, yeah, I ended up going to university, doing computer science and maths, and my dad was like, you'll always get a job if you do those 2 things, and you can do web design on the side if you want to do it. And I kind of always continued to do that. So I always had a passion for the kind of digital side of like the internet, and kind of saw a future there, which will make more sense in a minute. Don't worry, I'm not going to completely waffle on. And when I came out of university, again, kind of like the usual thing happened, which is you never know what you're going to do, right? Like, I mean, some people do, like, you know, they go and study medicine, they become a doctor. I came out of university, had absolutely no idea what I was going to do. And I ended up speaking to a graduate recruiter in London, and she was like, oh, you should go and work in search. And I was like, I've got absolutely no idea what search is. She was like, well, you do a bit of maths, you're quite good on computers, so there's this thing called, you know, search engine marketing, which is Google, right? Like it was, you know, at the time she's like, oh, you know, these little ads pop up on the top and you click them and they take you through to XYZ brand. And I was like, I've never clicked on one of those ads in my life. She was like, yeah, everyone says that, but everyone's clicking on them. And I was like, cool, that sounds fine. Went for an interview, got a job in search, still didn't know what it was.
Quite easily led at this point.
Yeah, yeah, like literally like first job, like straight into London doing something I had no idea what it was. And quickly turned out she was right. Like people do click on these Google ads a lot. And actually that's kind of where my career in digital marketing started.
I never click on those ads.
Yeah, everyone,
I never do it.
Everyone says that. Yeah, I mean, Google's a big...
No.
Google's a big business, you know, like, and that's from ad clicking.
Yeah.
So lots of people do. I
actually purposely, most of the times, tend to literally scroll down, skip the ads, and then go for whatever.
What blows my mind is when you search for a specific company and then an ad comes up, and you're like, oh yeah, why would you do that? I've just searched for you.
Or you click on your competitor's company because you know it costs them about £1.50.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, I ended up in search marketing. I did that for 10 years of my career, I suppose. Then ended up at Google, where I worked for 6 or 7 years, working on, you know, on that side of the business, which was super interesting. But throughout that entire period, like, I was very clear that I didn't want to work for someone else. I don't really like being managed by someone else. I don't like not having control of things, and I really don't like doing things that I don't want to do.
And here you are in the world's largest corporation.
Yeah, exactly.
Google headquarters.
And, in Google of all places. And I mean, Google's great in many ways, and it's given me lots of opportunity. But you know, and free lunch. You know, lobster pasta is quite nice for lunch. But it's like...
It was actually one of my questions. Free avocado and lobster. We have to talk about it.
The number of avocados they must go through in a day is unbelievable. I reckon that must be like the number one injury they have at Google is like someone in like the medical room with like chopped their hand, like trying to prepare their avocado in the morning. But yeah, there's lots of like amazing things about Google, but there's so much like internal red tape. Like you spend probably 80% of your time doing internal stuff rather than external stuff. So if you went to Google and you were really passionate about like helping clients do better digital marketing, chances are you're only spending 20% of your time doing that thing you really love, and 80% of your time doing the stuff that Google want you to do, which is like internal projects.
If anybody right now is listening to this at Google headquarters, just chuckling away to David, just give us a little shout out on Instagram and just say, I'm at Google headquarters listening. I'd love that.
Yeah, I know, it's very disparaging, isn't it? But I think, yeah, throughout this time, like I was always really clear I didn't want to work for someone else.
Yeah.
Like that was like the overarching kind of goal, was like to always try and escape that. And I feel like I was very lucky as well, because that gave me a really good base for starting my own business, right? Like if you worked in digital marketing for the last 15 years, whether that's in search, web design, whatever it might be, that is such a solid foundation now to like start your own business. I don't have to pay anyone for web design, don't have to pay anyone to fix my website. I could do most of my own marketing, although I don't now because I don't have time. But all of those things, like I already had the skill set in.
Yeah.
And then over the sort of 10, 15 years, or even before uni, I always had like little businesses. I was always trying to make money. Like I always like enjoy the thrill of like, trying to make a buck basically.
Yeah, so you had that experience at a very young age, really, didn't you? Of that independence and that
absolutely.
that enjoyment of creating something and selling it and being your own boss.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
to go to Google must have been, I can imagine, quite an internal battle for you.
I mean, it is and it isn't. I mean, financially, it's very rewarding. So, like that helps. But at the same time, like it doesn't take long when you work at Google to realize like the sort of failings of the job you're doing, in that there's a lot of overpaid people at Google doing something that isn't like hugely valuable. And they mask all of that.
Do we need to be careful here?
Is your ad account going to be cancelled? And both of ours.
Deary me, David. I mean, they can come after us. We've got nothing to give them, so it's fine.
Yeah, and it doesn't give you much like creative space.
Yeah,
and like you guys are very creative, right? Like if you were really constrained, you'd probably really struggle, right? If you worked in a really corporate environment and you were very much prescribed every day how you were going to be creative, that wouldn't be the right place for you, because that's why you do what you do, and you have this.
You wouldn't be able to thrive, really.
You wouldn't be able to do it, right? And so the strap tailor kind of came about really twofold. One is I've always had a love and passion for watches. That came from my grandfather. He always used to sort of tinker with them, gave me my first watch. Always kind of like, he was always like buying watches at, boot sales and antique shops and all sorts of stuff like that. And it just really got me fascinated in watches. My mum really liked them. My dad doesn't really care. But that's kind of something that's always kind of stuck with me. And one of the sort of, I guess, like overarching bits of advice that I've always sort of seen, read or heard was that like you should follow something you're really passionate about. Yeah. Like if I tried to set up a business selling socks, I reckon I could sell a lot of socks, but I wouldn't be able to stay up till 2 a.m. dealing with all the problems that come with selling socks.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing about the strap business, is like I kind of pulled everything together, which was like a love of watches, a community that I really understood and I was part of, and also then trying to create a great product from something I'm also passionate about, which is like leather making, craft and materials. And so it was like bringing all of those things together, which at the start was kind of just a bit of a hobby. Like I did it as a side gig, and I thought this will be interesting to see where it goes. I even remember like a French friend of mine, Olivier, who I used to work with. He was also really passionate about watches, and we'd find ourselves having like 1 hour coffee breaks talking about watch collecting on Google's time. And I remember him saying to me at the time, he was like, this will never work. Like, there's loads of watch strap companies out there at the moment already. And I don't think you'll ever do more than X sales per month. And I still joke about this with him now, because I'm like, well, now I have my own business. I don't work for Google anymore. And it's actually doing quite well.
You regularly send him screenshots of your monthly sales reports.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
What was that you said, Olivia?
And also at the time, I was like, well, do you want to do this together? And he was like, no, there's no way this is going to work. And now he's still working at Google. I'm sure he's earning more money than I am. But
he gets free avocados though.
Yeah, he gets free avocados and lobster. But yeah, that's kind of where I ended up.
What is it about watches? What's the love and the appeal?
The draw.
Of
well, I guess
watches?
one part of it is like it's man's only jewelry typically. So you've got a wedding ring probably, and you might wear a watch. And
such a good point.
And it's therefore, I think for men specifically, is like maybe one thing is style, but the other thing is accessorizing, and that is the only thing we can do it with typically. So I've always really liked that aspect of it. I really like the mechanics of a watch. I think it's fascinating that, this watch, for example, is from 1960. It's been used by a commercial diver every day at probably depths of 100 to 200 meters welding on oil rigs. It still tells perfect time. It's got bubbles on the dial because it's oxidized where it's gone to 100 meters below sea level and then back up to the surface. It's got so much character. And this watch, hopefully, I don't have children, but I've got a collection of watches that will probably end up with my nieces or their husbands or whatever that might look like in future. And partly that's why I really love them, because they always kind of tell a story. Like, I don't typically buy new watches, I buy vintage watches, because I always feel like there's a bit of a story that goes with each and every one of them. They all have character. They're all very different. There are some watches in the world that, granted, they probably cost like 60 grand, but they're like hand engraved. They might take a year to make. Brands like A. Langensen, have bridge work on them that's hand engraved, and if you took the watch back to a Langenzen in Switzerland, they'd be able to tell you exactly who engraved the bridge, for example. And things like that just fascinate me. And that's why I really love them. And the community's excellent as well, which is part of the reason I started the business, because it's huge. Like, the number of watch collectors is growing exponentially. There's a younger audience getting into it all the time. I think watch collecting, was typically only seen as being reserved for people with lots of disposable income. But watch collecting, to me at least, isn't about the value of the watch. It's about what it means to the individual. And I think a lot of people will collect watches because they want to show off. And there's lots of people who collect watches who are genuinely interested in the mechanics of it, the history of the brands, what those watches meant. There are watches like Rolex Explorers that were the first watches, to go to the top of Everest, for example. And that's got a history to that watch. And that's a very collectible watch if you get like the early iterations and stuff. So things like that I just find absolutely
fascinating. I haven't quite saved up for one of those yet. I don't think I'm quite good enough.
About 25 grand now.
Working on it.
Sam.
So, Igor.
Studio Ninja.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about our sponsor. And I was wondering about what we need to say in this little section, because I really want to talk about just how vital it is to my business. And one thing that came up recently was, in my own business, was that I was thinking about whether I need to get a VA on board. Like, do I need somebody that's going to help me just, perform some of the admin tasks? And when I looked at it, and it really boiled down to what do I need somebody on board for, I realised that I don't actually do much admin.
Yeah.
And I don't do much admin purely because of Studio Ninja.
Yeah.
Everything's automated. My invoices, my diary, my questionnaires that I send out.
Email templates.
Chasing up invoices. Everything's fully automated to the point where it doesn't take a huge amount of my time anyway. So it kind of defeats the whole point of a VA. So for me, it is a very integral part of my business.
Yeah.
And I think when you're running a business, you're self-employed like we are, being efficient, being productive, making sure that things run in the right order. If you find yourself doing any kind of repeat task, you have to say to yourself, why am I repeating this?
Automate it.
And if you can automate it, then that's it. And that's really where Studio Ninja fits in with me and my business. And they have very kindly given us a discount code, haven't they, for this podcast? So what's that discount code, Igor?
Another idea.
And another idea gets you 50% off your first annual subscription.
Yeah.
So it's just a no-brainer. I mean, I wouldn't even be hanging around. Just go and look at Studio Ninja.
Just go and do it right now.
But thank you very much, guys, for sponsoring this podcast. We love you. We appreciate you. Keep it up.
We love Studio Ninja.
So I think all of that fascinates me, and the community I think is actually exceptional. I've met lots of friends through watches that I'm still very close to now, and lots of friends through watches that have helped me grow my business and also been good mentors to me as well in doing that as well. So it's also just like a really cool community. It's just like a really nice group of people.
So how did the business start then? What was it like getting your first order and sort of like setting that up, and how did it start?
Can you just tell us what Strap Tailor is first?
Yeah.
Just paint a picture of what it is you actually do on a day-to-day basis now. What's your
so
sorry to hijack your question.
I
feel like we've just gone straight into the chat again, like we always do. But.
So the Strap Tailor, I sell handmade leather watch straps, largely speaking. I've expanded a bit, in recent months and years, but primarily focused on just making the best possible leather product I can for watches, and that's it's mostly bespoke. So that was something I learned very quickly when I started the business. Is I thought, well, I'll just make a range of 10 different watch straps in these different colors, in these sizes, and that's what my business will be. But actually, very quickly, I realized that people want a tailored product, and they want to have yellow stitching, no padding, orange edge point. It's so niche.
It's incredible.
And that's why people thought it wouldn't work, right? They were like, this is too, like, how many people want that? I don't know anyone who wants that. And I'm like, well, I think people want it. Like, I want it. So somebody else out there must want it. And it was just then trying to find that group of people. And it turned out that group was much larger than I thought it was. And there aren't many people in the world even that are offering that sort of level of customization. And that has its challenges as well, which maybe we might sort of through a tangent get onto later. But that's fundamentally what it's about in a nutshell, is creating bespoke products for kind of 80% of watches that exist.
Amazing. Yeah. Your question, Igor, about that the first sale.
First sale, and just how it started, really. Yeah. Just tell us.
So I mean, like I say, the business started with a very small subset of products, and I really started the business on Instagram. these were in the days when when you had an Instagram account, you would very quickly be able to build to, at the time I remember getting 1,000 to 2,000 followers quite quickly. I was like, oh, I've got 2,000 followers, it's exciting. And that was in a day when actually people really engaged, and Instagram allowed you to get exposure, which is kind of like the drug of Instagram, isn't it? I could build a business on Instagram. I didn't pay for a single piece of marketing. And I think for 2 years, my business is entirely run on me just putting content on Instagram of making a strap or different leather types, or a strap on a really popular watch that I thought looked cool. And then suddenly, people were coming to me through Instagram. They were coming direct to my website as a result of that. And that grew really quickly. People were sharing it loads. And it kind of grew exponentially quite organically, which is a really powerful thing, which actually I think is almost impossible to do now with Instagram, because they get you on the hook. They're like, you've built a business for free. Now you need to start paying for it. And now I'm paying for it. Because, it's not easy to get the exposure there anymore. But the first sale, sort of translating that into when people actually started buying, when you start a e-commerce brand or a retail brand, it's all about traction, isn't it? There has to be that first person that makes the purchase that's then going to go and tell someone else about it. And sometimes it's a bit slow, but it sort of started to snowball quite quickly. And the first sale feels amazing. Anyone will tell you that. And even now, 5 years later, when I get set, I check my orders probably 30 times a day. It's ridiculous. Or my phone's notifying me or whatever. And it still feels as good today as it did then. It's different because I can make choices now which I couldn't make then, which is chasing the sale. Whereas now I can retire a sale if I feel like someone's unfair or unreasonable or rude or whatever. But back then, it's magical. I remember calling my wife, Emma. She was at home with me at the time. I remember running downstairs. I was like, I've actually made a sale. Somebody wants this thing. And it's that first signal, isn't it? That someone's like, I believe in the product you've got. I believe in you to actually deliver it to me. And then also the kind of follow on to that is, the second, third, fourth, fifth sale, but also then when someone comes back and says, I love the product. I think that's almost as rewarding as the first
Did you
sale.
hand notes into Google after that first sale?
No, I definitely did not.
Sold a watch strap.
No.
I am gone.
But I think at that point, I was probably thinking I really hope this works, because I feel like there's something in this. And when I quickly then started to realize that it wasn't off the shelf products that people wanted and they wanted the bespoke stuff, quickly I was like, okay, pivot the business a bit and try and focus on that thing. Amazing is the short answer. And it still does.
Yeah,
that's amazing,
incredible, right?
And for anyone that's not sort of acquainted with the watch world in general, in terms of especially you being making custom straps, it's not as if you're kind of making volume on them. How much would you be selling one for, or what's sort of average of a custom piece or custom strap that you would be making, or did it vary really largely?
No, it doesn't vary hugely. And this is a really interesting question, actually. I was thinking about this in the car on the way up. My average price point is probably about £130, give or take. And that can be a calfskin strap. It could be an ostrich skin strap. I don't use skins from animals that are bred for their skin alone, caveat. Only focus on skins from animals that are byproduct of the meat industry. So calfskin primarily. And largely material cost is one factor. So there are some leathers that are extremely expensive. I use a horsehide, for example, called cordovan. It's $100 a square foot, for
Wow.
This much leather, which is insane. And the price of a strap is based on time plus material. And this is always the area where I get trolled. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, right? There's always someone on the internet that wants to try and hammer you down.
Yeah, could do it for a lot less.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Who did we have
right?
that with on the podcast recently about? It was Cat and Ash, wasn't it, with the burners?
Yes.
I could make one myself for a lot cheaper. Well, go on then.
Yeah, exactly.
Go and make it cheaper. Be my guest.
Absolutely.
And let me know how you do it, because I would like to know.
It goes.
Yeah. I could get my auntie to take my wedding photos for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course you could.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're going to be great.
Yeah.
And that's always the challenge, is like when I position myself as a luxury product. I mean, it is, right? Like, you don't go and spend £130 on a strap on a whim, like, or some people will, but most people don't. It's a sort of thoughtful product.
I just think that's fair. I was expecting it to be quite a bit more than that.
Should I put my prices up?
Well, I don't know. I think
This is a question that always happens.
In my head, I was just thinking of the types of watches that I see on your feed. I was like, they've got to be those straps must be £300-500.
I mean, there are people that charge $900 for a strap.
Right. Okay.
You know, like
you should definitely put your price up.
Yeah, there are. No. I mean, for sure, there are people that charge a lot more, and I think that's the thing that I'm always challenged on, is people are like, this is like, or especially on like Facebook and stuff, like the trolls are just infinite. But people are like, well, this is ridiculous. Like, why would I spend £130 on a strap? And it's like, well, even if you take minimum wage into account, and a strap takes 3 to 4 hours, depending on the complexity of the strap. Some of them a bit less, but that's 4 hours of work. Plus, then you've got to add the materials into that. And this is the same with most industries, right? Yep. Especially creative ones where you have a limit on capacity. And then you need to run the business. I think other people also forget VAT. That, like, you've got these lights on, they cost money, you're heating the building, you're paying for the rent, you've got a team. Like, I pay rent on my unit. Like, there are other expenses.
That is exactly why people need to share this podcast a bit more, isn't it, Igor? That's the least they could do. It's the least you can do, people, if you're listening.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes I think that people just don't appreciate that. We're in a world now where, like, everything is like tomorrow, and, you know, Amazon have kind of killed retail. Because, like, well, you order it now, you can have it by 10. And, like, I work in a creative world where it's like, well, it's going to take 2 to 3 weeks at best, maybe 4, especially if we're really busy. So yeah, like, people are paying a lot for it. Some people really appreciate that because, like, they get the customization. If I send and it's like wedding photography, right? You might have some customers who email you 50 times. You must get that, right? That are like back and forth before they finally commit. That is a time you haven't charged for. Like, that is your time that you've been on the phone, you've been writing emails for the 50th time. You're like, oh God, like, this is costing me a fortune now. It's the same with, like, bespoke products. Like, someone's back and forth on whether they want yellow stitching or red stitching, which I love. Like, that's part of the creative consultancy part. But that costs money as well. And then when they finally pay, it's like, yeah, okay, I've made a margin on that product, but I've actually made a loss because that took 2 hours of my time that I could have been doing something that would have actually grown the business. So the price of the product is relatively high, but I think it's fair considering, like, the cost of materials is high, labour's not cheap, and the cost of, like, running a business in the UK, as we all know, is actually extremely high right now. So it's not a cheap product.
No, it's good. It's good to know. It's good to know because it's such a fascinating world, really, and I really want to dive into the customization side of it. Really, how did you start learning how to tailor things, and was it something natural to you, or I don't know, was it something that your granddad used to do as well in terms of the leathers and everything else? Just literally the cutting and the threading of everything. And how did you begin that journey? Really, did you go to, not to school, but did you sort of like go into courses into it, or how did that sort of like come about for you?
Well, I think the great thing about anything, or largely creative now, is like the resources are infinite. So, you know, you guys put out a lot of content on, you know, how to be a better photographer, and the same goes for most industries, right? Like, if you want to learn how to make a leather product, there's an infinite amount of resources now. Like 20 years ago, you would have had to go to a course. It may or may not have been for the product you want to make. Like, if you want to make a leather card wallet, we could all go on a course tomorrow and we'd all walk away with a leather card wallet that would be pretty good, to be fair, because it's so simple. It's like cookie cutter, like, cut 3 pieces out, punch some holes in it, glue it, skive it a bit, and it's done, and stitch it, and we could all learn to do that. When you start
we've
to
basically just done it, haven't we, there?
Exactly.
We've all done it.
In our heads, we've just made a card wallet. And with straps, it's mega intricate. And that's the thing with leather products. It's like, the smaller the product gets, the more intricate that thing becomes, and the more obvious it is if you make a mistake. So there are some things you can learn to do really quickly and easily, and you probably don't even need to watch a video to do it, because a lot of it is trial and error, which would be the same, I guess, for you guys as well. Like, you all have your own styles. The same translates into leather work. Like, some people are really good at, like, making a belt and a wallet, and they will look exceptional, and they will still be way better than you could do in 3 years' time. And the same goes for straps. Some people make really rustic stuff. Some people make really fine, intricate stuff. And all of that is just a trial and error process and just watching loads of content. Like stitching, I could teach everybody here to saddle stitch in 10 to 15 minutes. But it would take you probably 6 months to 12 months to be really good at it, to the point where the stitching on both sides of the strap, for example, looks the same. Like it's all about tension, angle, technique, and simple things like not putting the needle through the thread so it gets jammed. Like there's little things that you only learn through practice, and it's all very intricate, and it really is just trial and error. And I think things like leather selection for me is part of the fun. Like I enjoy like this one, for example, is a new leather that I've just got, which is like called a wax pull-up leather, which means it's
quite suede-y, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It looks like nubuck, doesn't it? But it takes on so much character. Like I spilt some water on it at the weekend, and it's still there, right? And it picks up oils, it will scratch, and all of that patina just like adds to the life of the strap over time. And I really love finding those new leathers, like going to leather merchant, going through leathers, or buying it from Italy, or like literally seeing it online, not really knowing whether it's going to be what I want. It arrives, I'm like, damn, that's so cool. And it would be very easy to like copy other strap makers and be like, well, that's their bestseller, so I'll just make that one. I find leathers that I really love, and then I buy all of the colours. I find a particular style, like I really like pull-up leathers, so I'll focus on those because I know customers always really appreciate that kind of vintage look. And for me, that's almost like more the fun now. It's like finding new leathers, finding really old like vintage stuff where there's only like one panel in the UK or something, and that's like a limited run. But it's always evolving. Like techniques are changing, the type of straps that we're making are changing, and that kind of changes with consumer demand as well, right? Like what people want and what people buy in terms of, Panerai was a really big brand, and everyone wanted a chunky, thick strap for 5 years in a row, and they didn't want it to look particularly fancy. They wanted it all like frayed and whatnot because that was the style. And then people now, I'd say, are buying smaller, more dainty vintage watches, and they want something more refined and thin. So all of the time that is changing. It's just like whether you move with it or you try and sort of resist it and be like, there are some people who will only make a Panerai strap because it's like the rustic, easy one to make. So yeah, it's constantly changing. Techniques change, materials change. But that's what I kind of find really interesting, really.
Go on.
You're clearly passionate about it, and it makes me think, have you got any sort of like specific strap that you made that the customer, or even that you feedback that you got that that was the one the one that really satisfied you and really made you want to carry on and push more? Those are the sort of clients that want more and more.
Yeah, I think so. Not a specific strap, but there's a particular category that I always love doing, and that is kind of splits into two. But it's for people who have a watch that's been in the family. It might have been passed down by mother, father, grandfather. They may have recently died. It might be hugely sentimental. It might be a strap that they can't buy anywhere. They've taken it to 5 different places and are like, sorry, we can't do that. Like, that doesn't exist anymore. Because there's loads of watches that have really unique lug fitments, which means you physically can't buy a strap because it was made 60 years ago and no one makes it anymore. So they send us the watch or they send us the strap as a template. We'll reuse that, send it back, and they're like, this has been sitting in a drawer for 10 years because no one's been able to sort it, and now I can wear my granddad's watch again. And for me, like going right back to why I'm passionate about watches, that's kind of why, because like I say, at some point I'd like to think that whatever watches I've got left will become somebody else's, and they'll treat them in the same way I have, and hopefully not sell them. But that's kind of what's special, is like each one has a bit of a memory, and for them, they're wearing their dad's, their mum's, their granddad's watch again, and you've been able to make that happen. And that's way more valuable to me than like the money I've made from that strap, is like getting that feedback or getting that review that's like, this is magical, you've just like, I've been able to wear it again. Kind of makes me choke up a bit, actually, because like,
it's amazing.
It is really special. And we get that all the time. Like, it's lots of people who have inherited a watch that, they're like, I don't know anything about watches, don't know anything about straps. Can you tell me what I should get even? Like, I don't know what would look good. And now that's my job. Is like, I'm like, okay, well, it's got a gold case, this stitching goes really well with gold, this sort of leather if you want to wear it smart or with a suit, or, you know, do you like to wear, you know, jeans and t-shirt all the time, in which case go for this really rustic leather. And you basically surprise and delight, right? Like, they're like, look, I'll just leave it up to you. You've got all the specs now, my wrist size, etc. Like, just go and make something. You send it, and they're like, wow, this is incredible. It looks awesome. And that for me is like the fun part. So we've made like millions of cool straps that I always think, like, every time we sort of send it out, I'm like, that one's the coolest one I've ever seen now. Like, it's funky, and a lot of that comes from the customer as well, right? Like, I think I'm pretty good at choosing the right leathers and stitching for the right watches and making it look cool. But sometimes customers come and like with some wild like ideas, and I'm like, God, that's gonna look really ridiculous. And then I do it, I'm like, God damn, that looks awesome. Or like, look really cool in the summer with a white t-shirt. And that's how a lot of straps come about on the website, is customers come up with a cool idea, and I'm like, that actually looks really good, and I think other people would like that. And so there's your new, you know, that's the next product that goes up.
It sounds slightly more satisfying than search ads.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it sounds like you've got a good level of job satisfaction there that you just couldn't 100%, kind of
yeah. And I think that for me, that's what it's all about as well. It's like, I mean, I took a huge pay cut to do this, but for me, it was getting out of that life of like commuting all the time. I commuted into London from Leighton Buzzard, which is a 30-minute train ride. It's not even that long. But when you account for the fact that the trains are always delayed, it's freezing cold on the platform, it's packed, so you sometimes don't get a seat. On the way home, it's going to be delayed. I'd get home at 9 o'clock at night, I'd eat my dinner, I'd go to bed, I'd do the same thing the next day. And for me, like, that just wasn't something I could see myself doing forever. I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm not really enjoying what I'm doing. I'm not passionate about it. I think I'm quite good at it, but I know there's something more satisfying for me. I think there's a really good quote, and I can't remember who says it, but it's something like, if you think adventure is dangerous, you should try routine. It's even more dangerous. And I think that's like super pertinent. And that routine for me was a killer. Absolutely hated it. And now my office I've moved to the countryside. My office is 3 minutes from my front door, on a farm. So I'm in the country. There's just some lambs that have just been born in the field next door. You know, I've got complete flexibility to do whatever I like. I employ 2 people. One of them is my sister. The other one, Colette, is from the village. So I'm trying to sort of support, well, my sister, but also like local community as I grow, hopefully. Yeah. And I think that's an amazing thing for me. It's like getting away from that rat race. And yes, I don't earn as much money, but I'm infinitely more happy, and my happiness is worth more than the money I was getting paid before. So yeah, I think for people starting a business, like, a lot, if you've got that drive to like have more freedom, that should be like also the overarching like drive for you. Yeah. It's like, you know, the money is important because like we all need to pay our increasing energy costs and whatnot. But if you've got the passion and the drive, then you should always try and pursue something that makes you happy. Like, we're all so stuck in, you know, the sort of golden handcuffs of like, you know, working in a career because it pays the salary. And we'd all probably, well, not me because I'm quite enjoying what I'm doing, but a lot of people want to get out of that rat race and do something they're more passionate about, but they feel like they can't. And that's a really sad, worrying thought for me. And I hear it all the time from friends, and you know, my wife's been through that in the past. And I think, a lot of people get stuck, and there's lots of options. You just have to be a bit bold sometimes about how you go about it.
Yeah. On that point, when you reflect on that kind of transition from Google to where you are now on this farm, how long did that take? How long was that process from kind of having this idea and this chat with Olivier to say, I'm going to do this? Yeah. How long was that? And also, what did you do over that time? Like how? Because what I'm imagining now is like, you saying you get home at, you might get home at 9 o'clock. Is how do you find the time to be able to pursue that away from what is a time-consuming job that you don't want to be in? Yeah,
I mean, that was a struggle as well. Like, I almost killed myself, frankly. Like, I started my business on the side. I was working really long days, as you've just alluded to, and then I would come home and start working on my business. And that's my point about it also being a passion project, is like, it's tough on your body and like mentally when you're working so many hours, but when you're passionate about it, you can't wait to get home at 9 o'clock and start working on that thing, because you're like, I can't wait to do it. or I'd get up early at 5 a.m. and do some emails and then go to work and do my day job. And, you know, I'd be packaging stuff at 2 a.m. in the morning at some days, or I'd be working all weekend and then trying to find time for me and Emma to like go and do something. But she also was really supportive of knowing that that's really what I wanted to do, and that was my way out. I used to handwrite every single envelope that I sent out. I have like this little C6 cardboard wallet that I put every strap in, and I still do it, but now it's branded and it's got gold foil on it and stuff. But I used to handwrite every single one. Thank you for your strap, like hope it looks great on your granddad's watch, blah blah blah, David. I used to handwrite every single one, handwrite every single envelope. That was like 2 a.m. I fall asleep almost on the job. And the reality is I had to do that for quite a while, because I couldn't quit my job initially, because I was probably making like 50 quid a month when I took all the other stuff into account. And I was very lucky that Google allowed me to save enough money to kind of give myself a year's buffer. That's how I did it, is I was like, I'll save enough money so that if shit really hits the fan, like I can just like smash through this budget. And the thought in the back of my head was, I always know how to make money. Like whether that's like I'll go and get a job in a pub and work in the evenings to like tide myself over if it's not quite there yet, or you know, if it really all fails, I'll just go and get another job. It won't be at Google probably, but I can just go and get another job. And I think sometimes when people make that leap, they forget that, and it's very easy to forget, right? Like even now I'm thinking like, God, what happens if next quarter like the business is like just completely disintegrated? Sometimes you forget that you're like, oh God, I could actually just go and get another job. Like assuming like the economy hasn't also disintegrated, then I can just go and get another job and I'll be fine for a while. And then I'll work on whatever the next project is. But yeah, there was that 2-year period where I just worked my socks off basically. And then it got to a point where I did actually have to make a decision whether it was my career at Google or a career in that industry long term, or do I give it my everything and go full time on my own business? And when I did that, it grew exponentially, because all of a sudden, like I was getting up, you know, still mega early actually, because I was so excited. Like I used to wake up when I finally quit Google and I was like, I'm doing this full time now. I used to wake up in the morning, and before when I worked at Google, I'd wake up and I'd be like, my brain would be like, okay, calendar. It'd go through the calendar and I'd be like, oh Jesus, I've got that meeting. That meeting's going to be horrible. I've got to meet that CEO and tell him he's doing a really bad job at his marketing. And like, you'd be like panicking about the day. Now I'm waking up at 5, 6 in the morning. I'm like, wow, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to do all these things. I couldn't wait to get out of bed to start doing them. Like messing around with the website, you know, going after more customers, thinking about how I was going to deal with my marketing. And like suddenly I went from like terror of getting out of bed and going to work to I can't wait to get up and do my thing. So it was like an immediate shift in like mood and productivity, and that just meant that it just was able to grow super fast, because I was like putting all of my energy into that.
I think the reason I asked that question, I kind of knew the answer before I'd asked it, but it is just to kind of illustrate to people that might be, you know, in that job that we've all talked about, you know, a job that doesn't really fulfill them or satisfy them, that you know, what you've created hasn't just happened. You haven't just gone, oh, I'm going to do this thing and off I go and just, you know, there you go, I've created this brand. Like you've had to work really bloody hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you've had to, you know, stay up and do those late nights, do those early mornings, and, you know, really, really graft and work at it. And not just do it for a week or two, you've had to do it for 2 years.
Yeah.
You know, 2 years.
I mean, I'm still doing it.
Yeah.
Like
but I mean that transition period, it's that period of like handling almost 2 jobs.
Yes.
You know, it's a real battle.
Yeah.
You know, and I think the point I was trying to make is that, you know, you don't just get to the stage you're at now with your business where you're employing 2 people, you've got an office where it's just like that. It just doesn't happen like that. People don't see those late nights.
Absolutely not.
They don't see those early starts. They don't see those, you know, decisions that you have to make, and the, you know, sacrificing your weekend, you know, to give time to something that you are passionate about and believe in.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, like, and you'll have both heard this, but like you always get somebody, and it might be a really close friend, it might be someone you're doing wedding photography for, but the people that are always like, oh, you're so lucky. And you're like, well, yeah, I am, because I'm doing something I really enjoy, but I have worked my arse off for this. Like, and it's always like, oh, you're so lucky you get to, like, you know, work in this office on the farm. And it's like, yeah, but I've also made sacrifices, and I didn't do anything with my wife for like a whole year at weekends because I was like up early working. And yeah, I think like you say, people don't see all of that and just assume that it's all like, yeah, press a button and all the sales start coming in and like I'm actually okay now. But yeah, there's an immense amount of work that goes into it. But that very much is about, yeah, if you're passionate about it, and you know the old saying about like if you're passionate about your job, it never feels like work, right? Like, or some variant of that. It is true, I think. Like, yeah, don't get me wrong, sometimes I don't want to be working, but I can stay up late and work on something because it's mine and I'm passionate about it. I want it to succeed and I want people to be happy. I want customers to be really happy with my product and the customer service. So yeah, it doesn't feel like work all the time for that reason. And I think that's super important in whatever you do, really.
Amazing. You all right, Helen? You okay? Good. She's not fallen asleep yet. It's always a positive sign, isn't it?
Yeah, that would have been awkward, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Any sort of like takeaways or anything that you sort of like have learned from your time at Google?
Ooh. God. Well, one of them is not to work yourself to the bone for someone else because it's often not worth it. I think that could be seen like for a lot of these tech companies now making huge swathes of redundancies, right? Like you can be super loyal to a brand and work till 8 o'clock at night and actually like you're gone tomorrow because they need to make cuts. So I don't know. I feel like Google's afforded me lots of opportunities, so I don't want to sound like I'm Google bashing because this could go for any company, right? Like I could have been working anywhere and actually I was more passionate about something else, which meant I was not fully committed to the thing that I was there to do. So I've just been extremely lucky that I've learned what I've learned there. I moved around the company also selfishly to learn about areas that I thought would influence my businesses later. So I was a digital marketer, right? And then I went to work in the retail part of Google, which focuses on like mobile phones, laptops, Nest security cameras. And I went into that world where it was all about product development. How do you sell this product into the market?
You were quite strategic about it.
Yeah. And it was, working on return logistics, which is, how do you get the physical product back? And, like if someone wants to return it or there's a problem with it, like, so I learned about the retail industry. I learned, a lot about margins, sell out, how you, get other retailers to sell your product, how you partner with different brands to increase your exposure. And part of that was just strategic. And I wasn't very good at it, to be honest. I was working with people with 10 years experience that they're like, why is this guy from digital marketing coming in to like run like part of retail? And I was also thinking like, oh my God, what have I got myself into? But that's also the great thing about Google actually, is that they do allow you to move into other worlds because they're like, well, we hired you into the business because we think you're reasonably good at what you do, but also you're smart enough to do something else if we need you to. And they do allow a lot of mobility there so that people can try different things. And I don't think I was particularly good at that very specific part of retail, but it taught me loads. And I actually learned loads from the people in my team. And they're all still really close friends. So like I do lean on them a bit as well. But yeah, I learned an incredible amount by just moving around the business and being strategic about what I needed. So it's like, building your skills by just being a bit self.
That's it. Yeah. No, I love that.
Can we go back to the point that you talked, you mentioned that word Instagram.
Oh yeah,
and how you had that.
The same thing,
we're on the same wavelength, aren't we? You had that period of which I'm sure we can all relate to as business owners on Instagram. That you could put content out and just get likes and follows and grow and be like, yeah, this is good. I'm going to keep doing this. To now, where it feels incredibly hard and challenging to get that organic reach to the point where it's almost impossible now. I've thought this. We've had a previous conversation on the pod about this and how it feels like everybody is on Instagram creating content. And it actually, when you really think about it, how on earth can you stand out from such a huge audience now where everybody that's on there is a content creator?
Yeah.
Not everyone on there is a consumer necessarily. They're all creators. So you're in a market of creators. But how did that change for you? How did it change your business? And what have you had to adopt or embrace now to sort of drive that marketing and that growth, given the lack of organic reach that you now?
I feel like this is a total can of worms, isn't it? So yeah, like Instagram for me initially was just like a bit of a cash cow and an incredible way to like reach my very niche audience, like you were saying earlier. And it was super powerful at the time. Like I was just, and I'm not a content creator. I'm not brilliant at photography. I'm good at creating products, I think, and matching products to watches. And that was kind of it, really. I was just taking reasonably candid photos, like out on a dog walk or whatever, and like, this is a new strap I've done, looks cool with this watch. Like, you'd put it out and you'd get 400 likes. You'd be like, that's cool, people like it. It's like a bit of ratification for the thing that you've created, right? And people were sharing it, and my organic reach was great. It was my follower base was growing, and that was at a time where it was kind of everything was linear, right? So your organic reach grew, the number of likes grew. And a lot of people say like you shouldn't focus on likes, right? But it is the thing that helps you ratify whether you're doing the right thing or not.
Yep.
Now that's why that's a huge problem. But back then it was a great way to just understand whether you're creating good stuff. And over the years that became like my sole way of growing the business, as I said earlier. And then I think one of the challenges for me then was, how do I have time to keep doing this? Because back then I was probably doing like 20 emails a week, a few orders. Like I had all the time in the world, and all I was focused on was how do I grow. So like it was like, you know, just make loads of content on Instagram. I didn't know one was really doing stories then. It was just like physical, you know, square photo. So I just kept putting loads of content out. Then my time started to sort of diverge a bit because the business grew. So then it's like, how do I carve time out to do this thing? And all of a sudden, like my account was just growing exponentially. I probably got to about 10,000 followers quite quickly. And then like bang, overnight, my account was just like shadow banned. Like, you know, this sort of mysterious like shadow ban that, you know, everyone seems to get at some point. And all of a sudden, like, I just couldn't get reach. And the more I started, and I'm from a digital marketing background, so I'm sort of slightly cynical as well when it comes to these things. I'm like, well, now I'm in a position where Instagram are trying to get me to use the platform to sell my product, because, you know, that was when you could start tagging a product in the photo and like, you know, buy this on my website. And as soon as you start doing things like that, they're like, well, you're running your business for free on our platform. No. And then all of a sudden I'm paying for like my advertising. So I'm like, well, this is really important to my business. And I was growing my business organically for free. And now I'm not getting exposure. My crutch is gone, because my crutch was Instagram. I didn't do Google ads or anything. I just relied on word of mouth, forums and whatnot. All of a sudden, like, that crutch goes and you're like, oh, Jesus, like, well, I haven't got the volume of traffic coming anymore because no one's sharing my content.
I think this is also very similar. Like, you talking about that reminded me of, like, we had the same thing with Facebook, you know, 4 or 5 years previous, where people were like, what's happened?
Yeah.
You know, you could post a photo to Facebook and get, you know, 3,000-4,000 reach. Now you get 20.
Now it's just your mum.
Yeah. I don't even think she cares anymore. You know, so, you know, it's like we've said before, like, the landscape's always changing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think, and that is also a really personal challenge for me, because it felt like for a while I was spent so much time on Instagram. You know, like the sort of app on your phone that tells you like how much time you spent in apps, like in a day, and it's horrifying. And like I kept seeing like Instagram was like 2.5 hours or 3 hours, because I'd use it for market research as well, right? I want to see what watches people are buying, because that means that's a product I should be focused. Like, should I make a specific strap for it, or, you know, what trends are there? What are my competitors doing? Which I cared too much about initially, which was like, what are they doing? Should I be doing what they're doing? Actually, I very quickly learned that, like, the more you switch off, you still need that. You still have to have like a
good idea of the landscape.
Yeah, an idea of the landscape. But you will stress yourself out more thinking about what they're doing and thinking they're doing a really good job. I should be worried about them, than just thinking about, if you create a great product and, you know, great customer service, the rest will generally come, I think. And so personally, I ended up like just deleting all my own personal accounts, because I was like, I can't spend any more time. It was almost toxic, I thought, because I was worried about all my reach and stuff. I was like, oh, nobody likes the brand anymore, which wasn't true. Instagram was kind of killing it off. I was too focused on what everybody else was doing, so I deleted my own account so I didn't spend as much time on it. And then that meant like I wasn't in the app enough, and I was like, I'm not creating enough content. And then I started scheduling stuff, because I was like, well, now it's more for me as a business, just making sure that if a customer goes on it, it's like when when everybody did a blog and then stopped doing it, and you're like, was this brand legit? Because they haven't done a blog post since like February 27 or something, or 2017. And Instagram's a bit the same. You kind of have to keep on top of it, but I'm not using it now as my primary sales channel. You were the one actually that recommended I would put my face on it more, which actually helps loads actually. So thank you for that. Like, I don't like having my photo taken.
You're a good-looking lad, though, David. You're a good-looking lad. You're watching on YouTube. You'll know.
At the wedding, I remember like you kept trying to make me smile, like forcing me to. And this is actually why I chose Sam.
Oh, hold on a second. No.
All the secrets are coming out. More David, more David, please.
That's not my bag, David.
No, I know, which is why I chose you. Because I really loved your style.
I would like to say it's natural banter.
Yeah,
that's what we had.
But there were moments where like you were trying to get a photo of me and Emma, and you're like, smile like it's your big day, and I was just like, ooh.
Don't think I said that.
I can't do it, so I hate it. And then when I think you were saying like, oh, you should like, we were talking about it a bit on and off on Messenger, and you were saying, oh, you should get your face on them, or like, because people buy people, right?
Yeah,
like that is so true. And as soon as I started doing that, I think people realised that like it's not some faceless brand like Amazon where package comes through the post, it's got some cellophane on it, and you're like, oh, it's my Amazon passport, and you know that through the tape on the box. Like, with a strap tailor, it's a very personal experience. But as soon as I started putting my face on it, and people were like, that's the guy that's the strap tailor, or that's the guy that runs the business. Suddenly people are like, I'm buying into him. Like, and he lives in the country now, and he can walk his dogs in the morning because he's got time. And as soon as people feel that warmth to someone, I think that makes a huge difference. So that actually was like a sort of next step for me, is like, how do I do more of that? But I've always been thinking with Instagram, like, should I invest more in it? And actually, I'm not sure now, because I think the diminishing return is here. Like, I don't think if I invested in someone to help me...
in terms of time?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, if I put more time into it, I don't feel like I can get the reach unless I've got like, a setup like this and a professional taking all the photos for me. Like, I'm not even sure I could...
Even then, I'm not entirely convinced.
Yeah, I'm not convinced. It's hard to know what people want now, and I think I do a lot of advertising, paid advertising, and actually typically what works best is like, I've got a video where I talk about why I started the business. It's like 30 seconds or something, why I started the business, who I am, why I do it. And those sort of like UGC style things actually work way better than I had another business which I spent about $1,000 on an ad, because I was like, I feel like if I get this like really beautifully done and it looks like super slick, it's destined to work. And it was a flop. And actually, like, stuff that we've recorded on our phones, just like talking into the camera, just resonates because people stop to look at it. When they see it's an ad, they're like, it's an ad. There goes another one. Like, and the targeting's great on Instagram and Facebook. So that is one benefit of those platforms and their targeting methods. But in terms of Instagram now, like, I feel like I have to pay it lip service a bit because my product is very visual.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's better places to spend my kind of branding, marketing dollars, as it were.
That kind of leads us on to the next point, which is how you've then kind of influenced my decision with my business now to outsource ads. And I'm going to be working with the company that you've been working with for a little while, based off of your recommendation. But really just trying to understand, it made me kind of realise when we were talking that, in order to get that reach now, that you do have to pay for it a little bit. And
you do, yeah.
And it's such a minefield that actually to try and do it in-house, i.e. me running those ads, would be, well, two things: very time consuming and very expensive. Yes. Because I'd likely make, you know what it's like when you log into Business Manager. It is incredibly complex.
Yes.
Unbelievably complex.
And it changes all the time, which means you also need to keep your skills totally fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's how was that transition between just kind of going from obviously doing a few ads yourself without the assistance of a company to then taking on, and obviously that probably that place that I'm in at the moment where you think, oh, this is a bit of a risk, like I'm committing to a 3-month kind of project with a company that I don't really know much about, but I'm kind of trusting in them. How's that that process played out, and what have you taken from that?
It's been a really positive one for me. I think one thing I try and do as best as possible is outsource things that like either I'm not good at or I don't think is the best use of my time. And that's very hard to do early in a business because, well, partly it's very expensive and you need the cash flow to be able to do it. Partly it's trust because it's your baby. You don't want to like outsource it to someone and trust that they're going to do something good with it. And I think it took me a while to like feel comfortable doing these things and outsourcing. But actually, once you start doing it, the relief you feel as well that you're not solely responsible for trying to make this thing work is quite sort of cathartic, really. And actually, I think finding an agency was a bit problematic. Like I've used several other people in the past, and I'm quite lucky that I come from a digital background. That means I know when someone's trying to pull the wool over my eyes, or I know someone's not doing a good job. And I did go through a few of those. So it wasn't all plain sailing, got this agency that we're now both working with, and like everything was fine.
Well, I should just explain that actually the reason that I got in touch with you again was because I got served an ad by that agency and David's face popped up. And I was like, hold on a second.
I know that guy.
I know this guy.
I love that. That's so funny.
So, it was kind of like, God, if you can target me with this guy, you know that you've got my attention.
Yeah. It's funny, you're not the only person that said that as well. I've had other people.
I should also explain
I've
seen you on Tube adverts as well before.
Yeah, yes, I was on the Tube as well. Yeah.
Who was it for?
Tide Bank.
Oh, it was a bank, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I was also on. I was full height on double-decker buses as well. So I remember being in London and like
doesn't like putting his face out there though. Doesn't like putting his face out. But he'll go on a double-decker bus and a Tube advert.
Bus pulled up next to me and I was just a bit like it was like full-size me, right? Like literally right there. It was incredible. Well, that's a tangent. Agencies. I think when you get a good one, like they can like project your business rapidly, and I think with things like Facebook and Google ads there is an element of trust as well, because it's not overnight. I mean, it might be for some brands that are doing such a bad job right now that tomorrow they can just be like, well, we can clear this up like overnight and it will be better. Google's a little faster, but Facebook is all about learning algorithms and time. And unfortunately, there's like always a bit of a pain point with Facebook where an agency will typically say, we need 3 months before you're going to see any like real results, or that's where the point where you'll see more traction. And that is so true, but so many people get panicked because, like I say, you need cash flow.
My money's going and I want to see results.
Exactly. And I was saying this to Sam earlier, like when I look at an agency or something to outsource, the first thing I'll think about is how quickly can it wash its face? Because there's a point where you can pay for something and you can risk losing some money if you know that is going to start paying itself back dividends later. And any cost, that's how I look at it. It's like, okay, well, you're going to charge me £3,000 a month for that. How quickly do you think you can start at least making £3,000? Because then I know it's paying for itself. I don't need to necessarily be making more at that point. And then I want to know how quickly you think you can drive exponential growth above that, because that's the point where I'm like, happy days. Like, why employ someone and have the burden of that when I can outsource it and you guys you'll learn every day, you'll teach each other, you'll share experiences, and that will be a much better way to manage the digital marketing. And I think I kind of found that with this agency, and they do my Google and Facebook, and this isn't an ad for them, we haven't mentioned their name, but I think once you start seeing that growth and you really trust in the people you're working with, like I see them as like an extension of my team, really. Like we talk all the time. I very much trust them to do their thing because like I can see they're growing my business. I can see that they care about growing my business. And therefore I'm not going to be, I've experienced those sorts of customers that are like on your back all the time and they're like, this isn't working, that's not working. So I know there will be weeks when it doesn't work. That's the nature of retail. But there are also weeks where it's superb. And I trust them just to get on with it. And that's the beauty of outsourcing stuff to someone you can trust and will care about your business. Not in the same way you do, because that's impossible, but enough to make you feel like you've made a good choice. And I hope in that sense they do the same for you. But
they probably better do.
I'm
coming after you, David.
Yeah, exactly where I live.
But no, it is. It's just part of the course, isn't it? And the journey. And I've had to remind myself a few times that I don't know if this is going to work or not, but I have to take a measured risk.
Yeah.
And you saying that about washing its face, like, yeah, okay, I've kind of in my head, I've gone, right, well, this is well, for me, I'll be brutally honest, it's a 10 grand investment.
Yeah.
But, that might give a 20, 30 grand return. It might give a 10 grand return.
Yeah.
And I have to just be able to kind of go, okay, well, what do I need to sell to make 10 grand back?
Yeah.
And at the very least, make sure that I don't lose money on it. But
yeah, and I think sometimes with digital marketing, it's very easy to be focused on the immediacy of it, because it is an immediate thing, right? Like, you turn ad on, you're expecting a result. But certainly with businesses like yours, even more so than, way more so than yours, like, your path to conversion isn't 24 hours. Like, someone doesn't go like, I need a wedding photographer, I've seen an ad, buy now. Like, because you have to meet them, they have to buy into you, you have to buy into them.
There's an element of trust, isn't it?
Yeah. My path to purchase, so the time it takes from someone finding out about my brand, so new customer, finding out about my brand to buying a product is 20 days, typically, give or take. And that's a product that's a consumable. So, it is something they could buy today, but they choose to do their research and it takes 20 days. So if yours is 60 days, because they're researching a year and a half ahead of their wedding, then you have to shift your expectations to be like, well, I've invested 10 grand, but I might not see that again till month 4 or 5 when that person makes a decision. And then you might get all of it. You might get 3 or 4 or 5 people all at once because you started here, but you netted out here, which is actually your time to conversion. So I'd say for a lot of people, also work out what that is. From the moment someone first reaches out to you to the time when you sign a contract. And then that's now your expectation when you move to digital marketing. It's like, I can't expect them to deliver a sale tomorrow because I never convert a sale tomorrow from the first moment they click or they research me. So I think also you have to give agencies that kind of breadth and space to be able to do that. And I think, once you allow that and you start measuring that yourself, it's much easier then to understand what works and what doesn't.
Yeah. And especially, I guess, as well, if you selling a service or online product, is it high ticketed, is it not?
It's a huge commitment, right? Like,
there's so many
the cost of your
variables.
services is high, and someone is going to make a very educated decision as to whether that's right for them. They're going to go to your website multiple times, they're going to read your email many times, they might share it back and forth, like whilst they're at work as a couple, like discussing. So it's a long path to purchase, but the reward for you is like, you don't need to convert 100 people. Like, I need to, if I'm paying arbitrarily $2,000 a month for someone to run my Facebook ads, I need a lot of sales to make that pay off. If you're paying someone $2,000 a month, you actually don't. You could probably go 3 months, and again, we're talking arbitrary numbers here, but you could probably go 3 months and then get the sale, and then you're like, okay, well, that paid for the last 3 months. Like, as long as it's washing its face, that's always the most important thing for me. And then you're looking for growth over and above that. Once they start to also learn what is the right target market, who are the right people, what's the right demographic, is it that actually your photography resonates better with someone who is aged 21 to 28 than it is someone 35 to 45, in which case they go hard at that target audience once they know that they've got the data to prove that, but it takes time.
Yeah, exciting times, isn't it?
It is.
Go on.
I was going to ask, really, in terms of like, you seem to have a good breadth of knowledge in terms of like your customer base and where they're coming from. What would you say is the sort of like percentages in terms of like how you're getting customers at the moment? Is it ads? Is it organic reach? What is the sort of like percentages that you sort of like feel in your mind? Guesstimation, just to kind of like get an idea.
Yeah. So, I mean, the business has changed loads over the years, even from like demographics, location. I was pretty much entirely focused on the UK. Then I moved into Europe, but then Brexit kind of killed that off because, the cost of trade was expensive. People had to pay import duties. I do a huge swathe of business in the US now. And originally very much focused on just organic Instagram. Then I started moving into Google ads and Facebook ads, which accounts, I mean, I spend a lot of money on Google and Facebook ads now, but they do pay back in, quite significant numbers. Like, it's about ROAS of like 3 to 4, which is pretty good. So every pound I get in, £3 to £4 back. That doesn't take into account, like, obviously the cost of running a business, but like, as long as you're comfortable with what your return on ad spend needs to be, then you can kind of let it do its thing, right? So I very much rely on that. My view as a digital marketer as well, especially when you're growing a brand, is that you have to fill the funnel and you have to keep filling the funnel. Like, a brand like mine that's sort of a luxury product is also very much leaning on word of mouth. And actually that has really started to snowball now. I've always focused on fill the funnel, so get customers, because once I feel like they see the product, they experience the customer service, and they get that sort of like sort of touch and feel, if I've done a good job, they will come back. So my view is like, yeah, you might pay £30-40 for that customer initially, but if they come back for the next 3, 5, 10 years, then that has the snowball compounding effect, right? So
they're only going to have friends and family members that are in the same boat. They're going to be like, oh, I know a guy that does that.
And word of mouth is so powerful.
Massive.
I mean, like, the same for you guys. Like, your pictures will sell your services, but also your customers will sell your services, because they know people that are getting married, and they're like, oh, you should go and speak to these guys. Like, they do an amazing job, and here's the proof, right? And that's the same with my products. Like, they take it to a jeweler, the jeweler will put it on for them maybe, and then they're like, oh, who made this? Like, we often need straps as well. Then they reach out. So yeah, I do spend quite a lot on that, and it probably does account for 70% of my sales is paid for media, and the rest is like, and that's, I'd say, shrinking in favor of like organic growth, because those customers are coming back now, and that's that compounding snowball effect. And now I'm trying to invest more in the retention aspect, which is, nurturing the customers that I have. So email marketing is not something I've invested enough time and effort in. But in areas that I have learnt about and implemented, that makes up probably 7 to 10% of my revenue, which is free, right? Like, these customers that have said, I'm interested in hearing more about your product. And I email them occasionally to tell them about a new leather I've got or a new product, whatever. And, you might get £2,000 worth of sales from it. And often I look at that, I'm like, that's ridiculous. Like, I've just got the £2,000 worth of free sales. And, but it's always the thing that I neglect. So now I'm really invested in trying to really improve, like, nurturing my current customer base, telling them more about my brand, keeping them more aware of, like, they've bought a watch strap today, what part of the process is it in? Like, is it being cut? Is it being painted? Is it being stitched? So yeah, really trying to sort of evolve the business a bit, so that long term, I want to massively reduce my marketing spend at some point, because you also need to fill the funnel to power email marketing, right? Like, it doesn't feed itself. But over time, I want to pull that back, because a lot of my profit goes into ad spend, and it is a significant part of my my outgoing. So I do want to try and pull that back a bit, and that is the point of, like, invest in email now, and hopefully that can kind of take some of the burden a bit, and that's a bit more organic.
That's amazing. You've expanded quite a bit in terms of your business over the years. Any sort of like dreams that you have for, let's say, the next 2-3 years, really, in terms of just Strap Tailor in general?
Yeah, I always wonder what this might be, actually. I think partly, I mean, I've got things I want to do with the business right now, which is kind of probably pretty boring to you and your listeners, which is just like more diversification of what I do. And like diversifying products a bit, but trying not to move too far away from the core, because I think it's important that my business stays true to what it is, which is like bespoke straps. Because I think it would be very easy to like start diluting and doing like other leather products and stuff, and then suddenly you're not the strap tailor anymore, you're just a leather seller. One of the things that I'd really like to do more of is work with more brands. So I work with a really cool brand called Studio Underdog, which is started by a young guy called Richard, who was a watch designer for Braun, and then started doing his own thing. And we met when he first started his business, and we met over a breakfast, and we started talking about straps, and one thing led to another, and now I do all the straps for his watches. His brand has grown exponentially, and we've got a really great relationship, and kind of support each other as sort of two, I was going to say young entrepreneur, I'm nearly 40 now, which I keep forgetting, but he's young, and it's really nice to see his brand growing, and I'd love to do more of that. I don't necessarily want to work with like big major brands, because I think that's not also what I am, or it's not what I want to be. I don't want to be like some mass-produced manufacturer for, big corporate brands. And also, where I've had some very tentative conversations with some about that, it's very like, you're going to have to sign this contract and we need to see this, this and this. I'm like, this actually isn't really, that's like me going back to Google almost. Like suddenly I've got a boss at like some big company that's going to be breathing down my neck. I'm like, that kind of takes me back in the wrong direction. I think one thing that also changes as you grow your business when you start hiring is the responsibility you feel for someone else as well. And I think, I'm keen as much as possible to grow the business, support my local community where I'm based now. My sister works for me, so I have a huge responsibility to feel like I can make sure that Lisa's always looked after and she can support her family and things. So partly it's also like making sure the business is a success so that they can be successful with me, because it's very easy to be super passionate about your business and your brand, but if somebody else can be on that journey with you, like, you definitely grow better and faster, because they have the same sort of passion, or as much as you can expect someone to have that doesn't own it, right? And what I'd really love is like a really cute barn somewhere that's like been restored or something. We can have like a really cool workspace. That would be a dream. But otherwise, like, I'm super happy with where we are at the moment. I'm really pleased with the sort of feedback we get, and it's just more of the same, I suppose. More people would be good, so we can make more, because the creative industry is very it's the same with you guys, right? You only have a certain amount of time. You can only do a certain number of weddings. If you could do 10 times as much, you could sell 10 times as much, but that's the limiting factor with making a product is capacity. And if that could be solved, that would be great. But training someone to make a watch strap's like 3-4 years to even be probably remotely good enough. So that is always going to be a challenge. So it's always, how do I sort of balance that with other products that don't require like, hand making and whatnot. So no huge grand plans.
No, but they sound great though.
Yeah, I think it's really inspiring what you've done. I think there'll be a lot of people listening that will be really kind of just inspired by that journey and that process from the corporate world through to doing a job that really clearly satisfies and excites you. I think, like, from the outside looking in, like the exciting thing that I can see in your business, and we've talked about this very briefly, is that kind of that scalability to the US, and being able to kind of tap into an enormous audience that are going to want to buy into you and your brand, because you're David from the UK, just outside London. It's handmade. I can see that really kind of resonating with a US market, and I think it's only going to go from kind of strength to strength, really.
Well, I hope so.
Do you want to wrap it up, Igor?
Indeed.
You got any other questions on your list?
Yeah, I do. We sort of like touched on it beforehand a little bit, but then, as we usually do,
of course
we weave in and out. But one of the things that you said on your form, we always send out our guests a form, really, and something that you said there that really stood out to me was that money isn't everything, and this is quoting you: money isn't everything and time is currency. What makes you happy is time. More time at home, more time with friends and family. That is currency. And just talk more about that, really, in the sense of, and I think you very much wrapped it up in the sense of like moving from Google and why you really wanted to make the business work and everything else, and pursuing your passions, really. But that whole idea of time as currency, really, just delve into that a little bit more.
I think it's like, sometimes I feel like it's a bit of like an epiphany, and some people have it and some people don't, which is like, the more time you can spend doing the things that you really love, and whether that's physically doing a hobby, whether that's spending more time with your partner or your kids or whatever that might be, the more fulfilling life is fundamentally. And most people on the whole spend an inordinate amount of time at work with people that are acquaintances, friends if you're lucky, and then commuting each way to that place, that invariably you have so little time to do those things that actually make you really happy. And I think sometimes it's really hard to balance that. And I think from a health perspective, evenly, you have to try and focus on making more of that achievable. And I talked earlier about, you work for some brands and you give them everything. Like you work, crazy hours. You put, you're thinking about work when you're not at work. You're, picking up messages because we're always contactable now. And sometimes to them, you're just a number, right? Like you think you're part of this big, like warm hug, but actually you're like super disposable. And I just always wanted to get away to the point where, if I want to finish at 4:00 because I want to go home and see my wife and we're just going to go out for dinner because it's a nice day outside and we want to go and sit in a pub garden, like I want to go and do that. Like if we want to go on holiday next week because like we want to do something on the spur of the moment, I want to do that. And like the more time I've spent doing those things, the more I've realized I've made the right choice. And like I chose that life over money because I was really well paid and I did have like a very comfortable life. But actually, I would trade that any day again. Like, I'm still comfortable. I have much more time. I walk my dogs in the morning before I go to work. I sort of have a leisurely walk into the office. And when I come home at night, I'll go out on my bike or I'll go for a run or I'll walk the dogs or we'll sit in the garden together and have, a drink or whatever. And for me, that's far more valuable than the money I earned before. And I think I just wish having, I speak to friends all the time, whether that's at Google or other places or friends that work in different careers, that all are so trapped by this feeling of like, I can't escape because I don't know what I would do. I just wish more people could find a way out to do it. And I think being an entrepreneur is like a super scary thing sometimes because you're so afraid of, I don't know how to do this. I'm not an accountant. And all of those things can and will be scary when you do it. But I think like as long as you are passionate and you can give it a go and you can give it everything you've got, then it's a far more enjoyable world to be in. And there will be ups and downs and it will be stressful, just like your full-time job is right now. But I think you can always come out the other side of those things and you will definitely be happier for it, I think, on the whole.
No, that's awesome. We love to finish the podcast with the good old question of, if you were to meet 14-year-old David today, what sort of advice would you give him with everything that you know today?
Oh, it's a really tricky one, isn't it? It's hard because I think a lot of the things that have happened to me through that period from 14 onwards have led to where I am now. So it's like hard to think like what I would change. I think I would try and follow more of my passions then. I think this is like equally true of like school children now. It's like they're still very much, told to go to university and you're good at that thing, so just go and do that regardless of what the job might be at the end of it. And I think that is absolutely wrong. And I think you really need to try and follow more of the things you're passionate about. I wanted to be a pilot and never pursued that, and I still, every time I get in a plane, like I kind of wish I was doing it. And I think I would try and tell myself to do something that I'm truly passionate about, regardless